Hi, here we are Monday morning again. Monday afternoon for you, Aswartha. So, I've been reading the book Universe is Calling by Eric Butterworth, and it looks like we might be in chapter 11. And we skipped like 2 weeks, so I think we'll go ahead and read it. Do about 15 or 20 minutes of reading and then, okay? Chapter 11, A Word About Jesus. At this point, you may be thinking, I find myself strongly attracted to your new insight and truth, and by this concept as a science of prayer. But one thing troubles me. Where does Jesus come in? My answer to that is Jesus never went out. Jesus has been a great influence on my consciousness, and basically this insight of prayer that are outlining comes directly from the spirit of his teachings and the works of prayer dynamics that he demonstrated. Thus, in the interest of getting a clear perception of the prayer process, and so that your mind will be free of doubts and reservations, let's take a look at this, my beloved elder brother Jesus. Right at the outset, we have a problem. It is difficult to approach the subject of Jesus without coming smack up against his name that has been deified, his words that have been codified, and pictures of him that are haloed and unreachable. I was raised as a Christian in a very conservative Protestant church. Even as a youngster of 9 or 10, I wanted to know more about Jesus. The Christ on the crucifix or in the stained glass windows was completely unreal to me, and my faith was not enhanced when, as an altar boy, I once curiously looked behind the altar and found not a mystic holy of holies, but simply a storage area cluttered with old candles and used hymnals. So I should say that I have always been something of an iconoclast. I have no idea what that word means and how to pronounce it. But I have perceived Jesus as one too, which is why he so disturbed the establishment of his day. I must say that I have a deep-seated love for the man Jesus. For more than 50 years, I have been on a personal quest to know what he was about. For much as I am committed to the absolutes of metaphysical truth, I feel a strong need of the loving compassion engendered by Jesus. How do you study the life and consciousness of Jesus? You might say, through the good book, but that is an oversimplification. I would agree with that. There is an ever-evolving body of knowledge about the Gospels and the milieu in which they were formed. I don't know how to pronounce that word either. It is now known that the Gospels were written from 4 different perspectives and at 4 different times. During the intervening years before the time they were written down, an oral tradition of the happenings evolved with the inevitable result of glorifying the figure of Jesus. What emerged in the gospel account is a virgin-born, God-ordained, miracle-working, divine creature beyond any possible human frame of reference. It has been long been my view, which I have espoused in my teaching work for half a century, that Christianity, or perhaps we should say churchianity, has so emasculated Jesus as to make him totally beyond reach. Too much attention has been given to Jesus' divinity and not enough to his humanity. Not to question his divinity, but I want to make clear that every person is essentially divine, and that Jesus was the one who discovered the divine depth as a potential within all persons, and he demonstrated the full potential in manifest form. It is a shock to some persons reared in a tradition that refers to Jesus as very God to consider that he was a man in every respect, yet without sinning. Hebrews 4:15 talks about that. He ate and drank and had friends and enemies. He laughed and cried. He was criticized for going to parties and associating with what we might call the beautiful people. He slept much outdoors, was extremely dark of skin, and never ate with a fork in his life. Here is a significant comment about Jesus by Charles Fillmore, co-founder of the Unity movement. He was more than any other person who ever lived on earth because there came into his humanhood a factor to which most persons are strangers. This factor was the Christ consciousness. The unfoldment of this consciousness by Jesus made him God incarnate, because Christ is the mind of God individualized. We cannot separate Jesus Christ from God or tell where the person leaves off and God begins in him. To say we are human persons as Jesus was a human person is not exactly true, because he had dropped that personal consciousness by which we separate ourselves from our true God self. He became consciously one with the absolute principle of being. He proved in his resurrection and ascension that he had no consciousness separate from that of being. Therefore, he was this being to all intent and purpose. Yet, he attained no more than what is expected of every one of us. Now, there's that last sentence. Yet he attained no more than what is expected of every one of us. Um, so we've been taught that we could never be like that. But yet, I fully believe that Jesus expected us to become like him. Um, so I'm going to go on a little bit more. I am often asked, even after an inspirational lecture, all this is fine, but do you accept Christ? By this they mean, do you accept Jesus as the only begotten Son? Of course I accept Christ, but that is akin to accepting gravity. There is a principle involved. Christ is the principle of divine sonship. It is what is expected of every one of us. The Christ of you is that divine potential of you, and the universe calls you to work diligently to release your imprisoned splendor. This is what life is all about. As for the only begotten Son, Meister Eckhart brings clarity to the oft-quoted John 3:16 by transposing this phrase to that which is begotten only of God. There was that of Jesus that was begotten only of God, the Christ of him. But he taught and his life proved that every person has that inner quality which is begotten only of God. The trouble is that in human consciousness there is that which is begotten of Madison Avenue, of the pressures of keeping abreast of styles and fads, and of the race beliefs of poverty, sickness, and war. It is vitally important that we make a clear distinction between Jesus and the Christ, or else we will fail to grasp the full significance of the Gospels. and we will miss the point that Jesus was trying to make. Once I gave a lecture on this subject, and afterwards a woman said to me, "And to think that for all my life I have thought that Jesus was the son of Mr. and Mistress Christ." It is hilarious, yet it is sad, for it reflects the concept held by most Christians. The Christ is not Jesus. Now that statement is that's a tough one for most people to accept. It is that which Jesus discovered in himself, but it was the discovery of the principle of divine sonship that was applicable to all persons. A revealing perspective is to refer to Jesus Christ, Eric's Christ, John's Christ, Mary's Christ, Leroy's Christ, Aswartha's Christ. It's Christ is the only begotten Son, and if he's not begotten in each one of us, then we haven't understood yet who Christ is. But a questioner asks, "Aren't you interested in your salvation?" Of course I am, but salvation is a personal experience. It calls for taking charge of our life and progressively releasing our own God potential. Jesus didn't come to save the world en masse, but to teach people one by one how to find the Christ indwelling and to walk by its light. So, and man, this statement is blasphemy to most people. Jesus is not our Redeemer. He is the supreme revealer of the truth of our divine sonship. Our redemption is achieved through changing our own self-image from pauper to prince, from sinners to masters. So yeah, it's about seeing ourselves differently. I always think of the word repent. When Jesus used it, it means to change the image of yourself. Change how you see yourself. And here he says, from pauper to prince, from sinner to master. So, yeah. Do you want to go ahead and read some, Miss Wartha?
Professor Oliver Weiser, physicist, philosopher at the University of Pittsburgh, writes, in the long course of social evolution, man has sanctified many things as a source of ultimate power, the object of veneration and worship, but he has seldom touched upon man's essential divinity. Never have societies defied the creative force, the divinity in man. Yet, if there is one thing the Christian mystery sought to teach, it was the divinity within man, the Christ in you, undeveloped and unheeded. Where does Jesus come into our study of prayer? The whole insight of the inward out prayer process that this book is articulating has its roots in Jesus' teachings. The idea that universe is calling, the theme of this book, was a very important part of Jesus' life and teachings. But we must note that Jesus uses the word Father to mean the energy, the activity and creative intention of the universe. The Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever he does, that the Son does likewise. The word which you hear is not mine, but the Father's who sent me. Jesus was a great listener. He heard the universe calling often, and he dedicated himself to being an instrument by which the universe would call out its message of truth and transformation. The dynamics, the love, and the light of the Christ flowing forth as words through Jesus are actually what this book is about. Jesus said the inward out tone of prayer when he said, when thou prayest, enter into thine inner chamber, and having shut thy door, pray to thy Father who is in secret, and thy Father shall reward thee openly. It couldn't hardly be clearer in prayer. Go within to the still point of your oneness thought, and in a time of silence, listen for the universe's calling. In the secret awareness that the whole universe is present where you are, project the life and energy and substance as you pray from this consciousness, and the universe will rush and pour and stream into you in fulfillment of your dreams.
Do you have any thoughts? Did anything stand out to you?
He's trying to say, go inward, everything resides inside of you.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's all within. Jesus himself said the kingdom of God is within. That means everything entails the whole universe, and everything in it is within each one of us. Um, yeah. Um, oh, that's the end of that chapter. Okay. That one was shorter than, uh, but yeah, there's so much in this one that it's, it's, yeah, I could spend a lot of time with that. It's just simply isn't things as the things I was taught about it are simply not, yeah, I'm seeing it completely from a completely different viewpoint now. And so that's one of my missions is to teach that, to change that in the minds of men so that they can live above, because we're all, even in Christianity, everybody's trying to live the better life, but there's so many that just simply cannot seem to rise up to it. And so they fall back to, well, Jesus took all my sins, so, like I'm just this poor sinner that, I just have to trust in him. So, do you have any final thoughts before we end the call?
I think, yeah, basically he says that everything is within you, and basically universe is calling within inside of you.
Mhm. All right. Thank you, Aswartha, and
Thank
we'll
you,
see you
Lord.
next time.